So here are the riots, the LA riots. A psyop on the people. The cops pulled out. People rioted. People of color rioted and pulled all the... There's footage of people standing on the street and they wave them through. They wave them through if they're POCs, and if they're white, they get pulled out of their vehicles and beaten. I always ask, where's the gas pedal on that thing, man? Get it going. But, what happens is that I noticed back in the late 80s, me and a buddy of mine were into Metallica and Megadeth and, all those, and rock. And at that time, the culture of MTV and the culture for the youth was that. It was rock and roll, it was partying and 80s movies. I mean, you guys remember all that. But that's what it was back then. And it was a cheerier time. It was prior to 9/11. It was prior to all that. Prior to the Oklahoma City bombing. Prior to the first Trade Center fiasco in 92. They were getting their stuff ready to go. They were getting their psyops. So they used the footage of the officers beating the black man down in the streets, and not to mention, and it was probably a hoax psyop to begin with, just so happened to be able to film it from across the street, and I don't know, but regardless, then the people saw it, and the legislature and probably all got together, and somebody said, hey, let's pull our police back. And let's just let what happens happen. It was a beta test on the people. And they burned that place, and they say 60 people died. And we saw that Reginald Denny was pulled out of his shit and just beaten, just mercilessly with a brick. And to their credit, the black people went in and saved him and got him out of there. I mean, even they knew this is going too far. So they burned the place down for a couple weeks. Cops pulled back, and, all the major white flight areas were taken care of, but all the major areas that were all people of color were not. And now we see, look at that, we see. Okay, so everybody knows about the riots. Everybody knows why they started, because of the cops getting acquitted for it. But do you know how they stopped? This is the best part of the story. How they stopped. Maxine Waters came out and had a press conference in the middle of, South Central LA in front of a picking toad. I don't know. But everybody showed up, and there she was. And you know what she said? She said, well, there's been enough death and enough destruction of your own community. There's been enough, and what we got to do now is we got to stop. And here's how they stopped them. She said the welfare checks, the Section 8, would not be delivered. It would not be okay? Mama's not going to be able to pay her rent. Section 8's not coming. You guys aren't getting any food. The food stamps aren't going to work. They're not going to send them. The riots stopped that day. The riots stopped that day. The government got the data it needed. Yes, they will burn down their own communities. Yes, they will lash out against anyone that's not a person of color. Yes, they will. All the check marks. All the check marks. The beta test was over. So when everybody got hungry and they couldn't feed themselves and they had gotten tired from running around the streets and the liquor had worn off, they went home and all was forgiven and all forgotten. But see, it wasn't forgotten. It wasn't forgotten by people like me. And it wasn't forgotten by the government. I guarantee you that. So that's just a little story on how they ended the riots. A lot of people want to talk about how they started, and they want to harp on this and harp on that, and really cloud the water, dirty the water. But the truth of the matter is welfare checks stopped the riots. And now you know, and knowing is half the battle. So, and really, knowledge is the battle won. And that's why they don't want anyone having any knowledge. That's why my videos, I'll put them up. And for years I've done this. And once they hit around 500 and I start to gain some traction on what I'm saying, boom, video taken down for whatever reason. That's why everything is so low rent on my end, because the algorithm is hard to pick up how I film these videos. So Anyway, there you go. It's I'm redoing my channel. It's not for money. It's not for fame. It's not for anything. I just want a white perspective on what we're seeing. We always get the black person perspective. I always hear how, oh, hey, you're white privileged to speak on it. You have no rights to speak on anything. You haven't lived. I'm like, bro, I've lived in this country too. I've seen what you've seen. I've lived in these areas. I'm not rich. I have no white privilege. There's no guarantee when I walk in for a job I'm going to get it. I don't know. But I've raised my children. I'm older now. I'm getting older. And I really, really hate how this world has become. And I like to blame it on myself and say, well, you let it, but I haven't. I've been screaming out forever about what I see. And people laugh at me for it. They used to laugh at me. They're laughing out of the other side of